Welcome to Our View, the podcast, where we're changing the conversation about disability one story at a time. Here at Our View, we're all about education, awareness, and shifting perspectives. With each episode, we dive into honest, meaningful conversations with individuals from across the disabled community, amplifying voices, sharing lived experiences, and challenging the way society sees disability. Because disability isn't a limitation, it's a part of the human experience. So pull up a seat and join us as we broaden the view and bring real, powerful stories into focus. This is Our View. I would like to welcome everyone back to a new episode of Our View, the podcast where we aim to educate, raise awareness, and change the tone of conversation about disabilities. I'm happy to welcome my guest today, Matthew Shapiro. So thank you for joining me for this conversation, this podcast episode. I'm glad to have you on today.
Yeah, Arthur, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to change the world in our conversation today.
Yes, yes, that is exactly what we are aiming to do, one story at a time.
That's
So
right. That's
I'm
right.
glad to have you here to share your story today. And that actually leads me to my first question, which is the same question I have for all of my guests. And
Yeah.
that is to share your story with us. Tell us who you are and, what you do, some fun things that you like to do. And yeah, just tell us all about who Matthew is.
Yeah, sure. That how much time do we have? Because I got quite the story, as I'm sure all your guests do. But hi everybody. I am Matthew Shapiro. I'm 35. I reside in Richmond, Virginia. I'm a wheelchair user, a power wheelchair user due to having been born with cerebral palsy and diagnosed probably around the age of 3. I was born 12 weeks premature and spent 7 weeks in the NICU unit as a baby. I was so tiny that my dad's wedding ring fit on my wrist like it was a bracelet, and my head was the size of an orange. So I always joke with people and say, I'm really glad I outgrew that phase of my life, right? And have turned into who I hope to be, and try to be every day, which is somebody that cares for people and wants to, like you, with our view, really make change in the world as it relates to people with disabilities. I got my start. Well, let me go here. I graduated from Virginia Commonwealth University uh, in December of 2013, and uh, for those that don't know, VCU is the Cinderella school that made it all the way to the Final Four in 2011. So that's how I like to remind people who we are. I was a sophomore that year, and let me tell you, being on campus at that time was quite electric. But uh, was fortunate enough to graduate from there with a double major in interdisciplinary studies and sociology with a minor in psychology. So my interdisciplinary studies degree was essentially where I made my own degree, and that had components of public policy, special education, um, sociology, and psychology with it. I went that route because as I was growing up, I really got involved in advocacy, right? When I was younger, I thought I wanted to be a sports writer and went into journalism and thought about getting a journalism degree to be a sports anchor or a sports writer, and still have a major passion for sports. You will find me pretty much any day of the week screaming at the television about some game that's on. And with March Madness getting ready to occur, I guarantee you I will be screaming at the television for VCU and the University of Virginia. So um, I've always had a love for sports, but when when I was a junior in high school, I got involved with the Virginia Youth Leadership Forum. And there I really found that there was a community, right? That disability, and other people were like me. Up until that point, right? I always knew I was disabled, but, you know, as the smart ass, junior thinking I knew everything, right? Like I was like, why do I have to do this, right? My mom signed me up as a potential participant for the Youth Leadership Forum without telling me. And it was over the summer at Christopher Newport University. And when I found out I got in, I was actually really mad because I was like, dude, I'm going to miss an entire week of my summer to go to this thing that, you know, I know about my disability. What else do I need? And my mom always tells the story when we're, speaking and things, that I didn't say goodbye to her when she left and dropped me off at CNU. I don't distinctly remember it that way, but she is adamant that I did not say goodbye to her when she dropped me off, and that was really my first time away from home without my parents as my primary caregivers. Because at that program, right, they have personal care attendants, and they get you up in the morning and do all that stuff. So, really, the first time being away from my parents in that regard. And then uh, when she came and picked me up that Friday, uh, she said I was like a whole new person, right? Because I found community. I found people who were older than me at the time that, had gone through or were going through a lot of what I was trying to figure out at the time as a junior. And I figured out that my voice and my ability to talk and share a message was my greatest asset. I might not be able to walk or I might not be able to do certain things, but those people that know me know that I can run my mouth really, really well, right? And I can um, challenge people and I can use my voice for good. And that was really the first time that that became very clear to me. And from that point forward, I was hooked on the whole policy making and advocacy and speaking to people who were in positions of power to really try to make change for the disability community. And so when I left the Youth Leadership Forum program, I wanted to get involved in anything and everything leadership related so that I could grow my leadership skills. I could, work with others. I could understand how policymaking works, and other things to really try to make change, not only for myself, but the entire disability community as a whole, right? I view myself as someone who I'll be the voice for the voiceless. However, I can um, be that conduit, be that person to make change is ultimately what I try to do. And from that point forward, I got involved in another program called the I'm Determined Project through the Virginia Department of Education. I went to all kinds of different leadership programs, both disability related, political related, all kinds of things to sort of soak up as much as I could about leadership and development and all of those things. And uh, graduated from college and continued to be involved in policymaking. I forgot to mention while I was in college, I interned twice in DC, once at the Virginia Department of Transportation in their Human Resource Center, which was basically an internal office that provided accommodations for employees with disabilities who worked at DOT. And then I was fortunate enough in 2012 to intern for the Obama administration in the White House. So I took a semester off from school and was there in 2012 when President Obama won re-election. One of the hardest experiences of my life, but one of the most worthwhile experiences as well. So um, we'll talk about what I'm doing now because I'm sure you have questions about that. But that's kind of how I got here, and I evolved even more. But we'll talk about that as we go.
Fantastic. I am loving everything about this so far, and we're only at question one. It's a little bit off topic, not a question that I had listed, but have you been to the Disability Policy Seminar in DC?
I have. I'm trying to remember when I went. I know within the last like 5 to 10 years, I went at one point. Um,
Okay.
I would love to do more of that, right? It's a matter of time, energy, travel ability, right? Like
Yes.
all the things to be able to do that. But I, I love engaging in kind of conversations with like-minded people like yourself, Arthur, where
Yeah.
uh, my view has always been, what's a safety in numbers situation, right? Like, how can we
Mm.
all? I'm gonna nerd out for a second, but roll with me. Um, I have always been someone that has wanted to have another disability rights movement, right? Because
Hmm.
the issues of today were not the issues of 1990-91 when the ADA was passed, right?
Right.
However, we're still focused on those issues today, right? We're still focused on lack of transportation, lack of employment, lack of benefits, lack of accessibility. And yes, while all those things are still important and we still have a lot of work to do, and we have improved in many regards in those instances, that's all we're still focusing on. And that bothers me, right? Because we're not talking about what is the next generation of challenges that are going to impact you and I as disabled people, being it driverless cars, being it how AI is going to help or hurt us as people with disabilities, right? Thinking about how something like ChatGPT can be a tool for us to finally level the playing field. We are not incorporating in that into the Americans with Disabilities Act as
Hmm.
well as I think we could, right? And we're not actively having conversations about how those things are going to change for us. And as you know, technology changes every hour, every minute,
All right.
every day, right?
Yeah.
And so something that's going to happen 2 years from now might impact us even more. And then the other challenge I have with the disability rights movement and honestly like our community as a whole, I love our community, right? I genuinely do. But there are also moments that really bother me about our community in the context of the siloing, right? And I am somebody who is blind, so I'm going to focus on those issues. And or I'm somebody on the autism spectrum and I'm going to focus on those issues, or I'm a wheelchair user and I'm going to focus on those issues. Let me first say you absolutely should focus on those issues. But in addition, you should, how can we all work together to be uh, a unified front, a unified voice to policymakers, to people who are in decision making positions, to to show that the disability community has heft, has authority, has um, power to really make change and make an impact. And honestly, I don't think that's something we do well even today as a community as a whole, and that bothers me, right? That frustrates me that I think if we were able to solidify and sort of show our political might, we might not see situations where cutting Medicaid and Medicare are constantly on the table, where uh, you know insurance companies have wheelchairs that cost $35,000, but those are mobility aids that both you and I need, and why on earth do they cost that much? Right? My mom always makes the joke that if you're buying a popsicle stick, it's 2 cents. But if you're buying a splint made of those popsicle sticks, it's $500. Right? Like that doesn't make sense to me. And so uh, we need to be talking about more consistently and more as a unified front about those issues, and elect people and put positions in power, that people in positions of power that are going to support us and stand by us when those issues arise. Sorry, I told you I was going to nerd out for a second, but um, yeah, I get fired up thinking about it.
That was totally fine. It was, and the popsicle stick and the splint analogy. Wow, that was like my jaw literally dropped. That's a great point to make. Like, yes, you can go buy popsicle sticks for, a box of 500 for $5 probably.
Right,
But yeah, if you break your finger or something, they charge you, $500 for it. Like,
right. For
wow,
one splint, right? Like
yeah,
it's
that
like,
was, yeah, that was a great analogy. Again, this is why as you said, like the silo effect of, I'm a wheelchair user, I have spina bifida. Yes, I could have made this podcast just about spina bifida or
sure,
just about wheelchair users, but I chose not to because, first of all, the name is Our View, so want to be as inclusive as possible with as many people in the disability community as possible that have different diagnoses that their life is impacted by these diagnoses in different ways. And even with uh, I have had people guests that have spina bifida, but they're impacted differently than I am.
right,
So it's really all in um, sharing our stories and our experiences of living life and what it's like for us in different parts of the country, different parts of the world.
sure.
And so again, I'm very glad, very happy to have you on today, and definitely look forward to continuing all of these conversations after after we record for sure. So the next part, you explained a little bit that you were diagnosed with cerebral palsy. Is there anything else that you didn't mention about that diagnosis that you would like to share about how that diagnosis impacts your life as an adult now?
Yeah, so I mean, I have limited mobility, right? Like I am very, very blessed. My parents would probably love it if I couldn't talk as much as I do, right? And because they might have some moments of peace and quiet. But like, I am not joking when I tell you my greatest asset and my greatest tool is my voice. I am incredibly grateful that I hope I come across articulately. I can share messages, right? I can approach policymakers. I can have a conversation with just about anyone, um, and can't imagine what my life would be like if I didn't have the level of speech that I have. Um, and so, beyond that, I am full assist with all ADLs. Like I need attendant care pretty much all day. Once I'm in my chair, right, and things are within my reach, I can be pretty self-sufficient. Um, I'll come in my office and I'll do my work on my own, but for personal care needs or other things, right? Like I'm definitely in need of PCA. And like and that's the other thing, right? Like paying PCA's quality wages, right? Like it is so hard to keep and maintain good personal care attendants because they get paid pennies, right? And so again, kind of all these policy issues that are still issues and we need to fix. That's kind of my motivator every day as it relates to other aspects of my disability. Um, I often tell people I live in a world that doesn't is not built for me, right? Like I yes, we have the ADA and yes, we have curb cuts and yes, we have a lot of accommodations that prior to the ADA would have been a lot worse, and you and I have grown up in the ADA generation. Um, but that doesn't mean that everything's hunky dory, right? Like I still get situations where I can't get into spaces, or I would love a world where I didn't have to question whether I can get into something anytime I try to go visit, or I would love a world where why do we continue to build with stairs when not everyone can use stairs, but everyone can use a ramp, right? Like what is so special about stairs? From my perspective, nothing really, right? So like why do we continue to have architecture that in order to get into it there are stairs? Again, I can't always use stairs, but I can always use a ramp, right? And anyone else could as well. So it's it's those kinds of things that, I'd love to be able to wake up one day and not have to plan every aspect of my day and not have to wonder, can I get into a certain space? But just be able to do that. Like as a wheelchair user, can you imagine the stress that you and I would feel so much more less of if that's how we could operate?
Yes, it's it's amazing. Like you said, everybody can use a ramp, and um and when we want to go places and do things, we shouldn't have to think about, is that place going to be accessible for me? Is there going to be a ramp? Is there going to be an elevator that's working, in that venue, and,
Is there
that
going to be a
train
bathroom I
station?
can use, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, a bathroom that's big enough to fit my wheelchair so that I can actually turn around and actually use the use the facilities.
and
So
I think the
it's
thing that's frustrating
yeah.
is because that's everything that the ADA is supposed to do, right? But the fact that we still have to plan and be like, I don't know how you feel, but I always feel like like I have to be on at all times, right? Because I'm always surveying. Can I get into this door? Is there an automatic door here? Is there a restroom that can work? I would love nothing more than be able to take a deep breath and know that no matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing, I can feel included in that space.
And to speak more about the work that you do. So you have an LLC called Six Wheels Consulting. Excellent name. I love
Thank
it.
you. Thank you.
So can you tell us what kind of work you do with your Six Wheels Consulting, and what inspired you to create this business?
Yeah. So I'll go to the inspiration first, and then I'll talk about what we do. So I had mentioned that I graduated from Virginia Commonwealth in December of 2013. And like all people, what do you do after you graduate? You look for a job, right? And I went through at that point, excuse me, I knew I wanted to work in the disability space. I knew that, if I could get like a dream job in DC or really be kind of doing policy work, that would be where I would want to be, right? And utilizing my strengths of connecting with people. I'm very much a people person. And so I went through the traditional, I applied for some jobs, I got some job interviews, but I was never getting to the point where I was getting a formal offer to say, Matthew, we want you to come work with us. And so in December of 2014, about a year later, I was sort of laying in bed one night and I had mentioned that I had done a lot of youth work and youth engagement work. And I had done consulting without it being labeled consulting, right? Like I would work on projects with the Virginia Department of Education and they'd pay me, here's a $500 stipend, right, for your efforts. Essentially, I'm a consultant there, right? But I hadn't at that point labeled it consulting. And so I was laying in bed one night and I had all my experience of doing youth work, of doing public speaking, of being involved with politics, and policy making. And I was like, let me see if I can start my own business, right? And sort of as we often have to do as disabled people, we have to make our own luck, right? We have to make our own thing. You've done it with our view, right? I've done it with Six Wheels. Um, and and so from that point on, I got fired up, right? I created an LLC. I got a friend of mine to make me a logo. It's the logo that you see on my website to this day. I started networking like crazy, trying to meet with anyone and everyone who would work with me. And so our vision, our taglines are very similar, right? Like I want to change the way people think about, talk about, and approach disability issues beyond just the ADA. Because as I mentioned earlier, I live by this notion of inclusion above compliance. Because compliance is the bare minimum of what's required in order to make something accessible. Why can't we go above and beyond what the ADA requires to make things work for everyone, right? That goes back to the door, that goes back to building accessible playgrounds, that goes back to thinking about how we can welcome and invite everyone into all spaces that we engage with in our society. And so, how do we do that work? Well, we have three buckets that we do. I'm a consultant. So currently I'm on multiple architect projects for an architect firm here in Richmond. We're building the Supreme Court building, the new Supreme Court building of Virginia, which is very, very cool. And I'm serving as their accessibility expert there. I helped to build a new residential facility for people with disabilities. It's called the Virginia Home. And they've been in the same building for a very, very long time, and they're building a brand new state of the art, fully accessible, fully inclusive campus. And so I've been on the team to help think that through. I do assessments of spaces. Again, I have the ADA background, but I really go in there and say, how can we make this better from an inclusion above compliance standpoint? So when I do my reporting, I give you what the ADA requires, but then I also give you a common sense and cost effective solution to that problem, right? Because accessibility beyond everyone's mindset doesn't have to cost you $1 million to do, right? You can buy $100 portable ramp to make something more accessible. You can move furniture and move things around to make a space more. That doesn't cost you any money. That costs you manpower, right? That costs you hours in rearranging how your layout is. Um, I do a ton of trainings around sensitivity training or working with HR professionals about how do we bring people with disabilities into the workplace. Um, so I do consulting. I do a ton of public speaking. Again, using my greatest strength, my voice, to impact people that I talk to. For example, I have a program coming up here at the end of the month where I'm going to go talk to elementary school age kids, which I am so excited about because as we were talking before we hit record, you never know what elementary school age kids are going to say, and
So
so
true.
I'm always excited and eager to be part of that audience. They're doing an inclusion day type of event at the school that I'm speaking at, and I'm the keynote for that. I'm very excited about that. And then I just finished, as of this week, I'm a registered lobbyist in the Virginia General Assembly where I lobby on behalf of employment issues for people with disabilities, making sure that people are in competitive, integrated, fully included workplaces where they're getting good wages. They're not getting sub minimum wage, but they're getting good wages and they're fully included in the workspace. I don't know if you found this within your work, but the greatest thing about my work is literally any sector could benefit from accessibility and inclusion, right? Be it hospitals, be it retail stores, be it amusement parks, be it libraries, right? Anything could be made more accessible and inclusive. And so I get to work in so many different spaces and I get to um, you know, impact making things more accessible every single day. And but my challenge is how do I grow, right? How do I become I want to be a national voice on disability and inclusion, where we're really again challenging the way that we're thinking about, talking about, and trying to get away from the status quo, right? We talked about the status quo a little while ago. How do we get away from the status quo and actually and significantly make real change that matters and will impact people to make the world better for people like you and I?
Yes, this work that you do is so important. I smiled inside when you mentioned making amusement parks more accessible. I was just out to dinner last night with a friend that I've known since middle school and and her boyfriend, and we were talking about amusement parks. And they were like, do you ride amusement park rides? I said, not as an almost 45-year-old. I said, but 20 years ago, you couldn't stop me from,
Right,
25
right,
years ago, you couldn't stop me
right.
from riding an amusement park ride. And that is so important, like you said, in every space it can be made more accessible because people with disabilities go in every space, including amusement parks.
And they
You
do
know,
everything, right? They have
yeah,
relationships. They
right.
they have children. They start businesses. They work in
Yes,
businesses, right? It's literally everything. And yet, and even still, you and I live in a world that doesn't work for us. We wake up every
right.
day and we have to navigate challenges that the average able-bodied person does not have to. And
Yeah,
that, like my dream, my utopia is to live in a world where that doesn't happen and to live in a world where somebody doesn't, I don't know how often this happens to you, but at 35, this still
hmm.
happens to me on a regular basis. I go out in public, I'm with friends, somebody comes up to me and goes, "I'm glad you're out today."
Oh, damn.
As as as
Yes.
if as if I am supposed to be sitting at home doing nothing, not living
Hmm.
my life. And I don't know how to respond to that comment. It's oftentimes I'm like, thanks, right? Because like I
Right.
literally am so dumbfounded by the question or the comment that I don't, I'm speechless, which again, for anyone who knows me, if I'm ever speechless, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Um, but it's all of that that like in 2026 is still an issue.
Hmm.
And to me, that's wrong. And that is unacceptable in 2026.
Yes, and that has happened to me many times where people have said that or something very similar to that. People who have listened to this podcast or people who know me, I love concerts. So I go to concerts and all types of music, and a lot of times, I won't say all the time, but a lot of times, the accessible seating section is pretty much empty besides myself and my guest and maybe one or two other people when the section can fit 20 people maybe.
Sure,
So there might be six people there total.
sure,
So, so I don't like it that they say it, but I can see why because, maybe the accessible seating section is usually empty.
right,
But to say like, oh, it's good to see you out, or, I did respond one time. It was not kind, I admit it. But I did say, well, they let me out, the last Saturday of every month. So,
right, right.
I'm glad
And
glad you're
and
working today to catch me out.
and
But
sometimes, right, like you got to have humor with it because I
yes.
and I don't know how you feel with your work, but I view myself as a teacher, right?
Hmm.
I I'm not in front of a classroom every day, but I am interacting with people every day. I am trying to be somebody that illustrates you can have a positive interaction with somebody with a disability.
Absolutely.
You don't have to be afraid to come up and talk to Arthur or come up and talk to Matthew.
Hmm.
We are what? We are people first, right?
Yes.
And we want the exact same things that you want, but in order to do that, somebody has to be the person to say, like, "Ooh, that didn't hit me right. Let me explain to you why we need to say that differently, or why we need to use person first language or identity first language beyond something else." But at the same time, while I definitely view myself as that, and 97.5% of the time, I am being that teacher. There's still that 3.5% of the time where it's like, do I have to do this shit again? Right? Like, do I have to be the one
Right.
to be the educator? And again, I would love to live in a world where somebody doesn't come up to us and go, "I'm glad you're out today," or I would love to live in a world. My mom calls it the "there but for the grace of God go I look," and it's
Hmm.
typically when somebody walks by me, she'll catch it more than I will. Because typically when they walk by me, I'll smile, I'll engage, right? Like I'm trying to be a friendly person.
Right.
And I do that same thing with like little nuggets, right? Like I will let them play with my power chair if we're in a safe space. I'll let them drive me around just so that they can have a positive experience and be like, oh, it's
Right.
not scary to go talk to Arthur or
Hmm.
Matthew. They're people. But my mom always talks about the there but for the grace of God go I look, which is when a person walks by and they kind of get this look on their face of like, oh my gosh, I'm glad that's not my son or daughter, right? As if they're expecting that my life is hard, which don't get me wrong, we have challenges every day and it has moments where it's hard. Everyone's life is hard, but what you don't know is I could probably outwork your son or daughter like nobody's business. Right? Like I've interned twice, I've started a business. I've like you're making a snap judgment on me just because my butt sits in a seat and rides around every day. Right? Why? Again, why? Right? And um those are the types of things, and that's the type of mindset that our view, Six Wheels, and anyone else who's working in this space is trying to fix. I wish that that lived experience held the same weight as like what's on a resume, right? Or when somebody's looking at a consultant, like, okay, what like don't look at just the credentials, look at the lived experience, right? Because yes, I have credentials. Yes, I've gone to school. Yes, I've done all the things. But a lot of where my brain for my consulting work comes from and where like I think about things is because I've seen it and I've done it and I've lived it and I've had to experience it. And so how can because for me, the other huge part is like how can I make it so that the generation of disabled people behind us and behind me don't have to deal with the same BS that you and I had to deal with growing up. And so that is, another thing that I am regularly thinking about as I'm doing the work that I'm doing.
Yes, that reminded me of in doing my own consultant type of work. I had someone who was looking into potentially hiring me for something, ask me if I do this for a hobby. And I'm like, no, I do this because I live it. I
Yeah.
live this and I'm out in the world living life and want to help make changes in places that I frequent and places that other people with disabilities frequent to make them more accessible and more inclusive. So, like you said, having the lived experience should have as much weight as, the credentials and the schooling and the work experience that people have, put on their resume because it's really experience of, of living with a disability for
Yeah.
sure.
And to that point too, like pay us our worth, right? Like, there was a long time when I first started my consulting business where like I was happy to get like $250, right? Or $100. I've had some business coaches and some other people in my circle say, dude, like you are really good at what you do. Charge your worth. It's knowing your worth and expecting the people that want to hire you for your expertise to pay you that worth, right? There is this notion in the disability space that like, oh, you'll just do it for free because like, can you do this for free or can you do this like gratis or we don't have a ton of budget and like blah blah blah. And sometimes like depending on how I'm feeling and depending on how what kind of relationship I have with that client or potential client, I might do some things, but like I'm not going to regularly accept free or no pay opportunities. And fortunately for me, like I am consistently getting, you know, multi-thousand-dollar project opportunities that I'm just incredibly grateful for. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that from the context, I know what my worth is. I know that I am good at what I do. And people that are going to work with us need to put that value and put monetary value behind that worth and that knowledge and that lived experience.
Absolutely. And when like you said, when you believe in yourself that you are worth, what you're worth, and people will pay it, absolutely, because again, they would pay someone else who has 35 years of consulting experience,
Right.
as a job if they were a consultant for the last 35 years at a major company or business or had their
Right.
own business.
Right.
So why shouldn't they pay you what they would pay someone else who had the same amount of years of experience
Sure.
in that field?
Sure.
So yeah, that is so important and so true. And um, to wrap up, just two more questions that I
Sure.
have. So the first, we've done a lot of had a lot of conversation about the Americans with Disabilities Act that was signed over 30 years ago, 35 years ago at this point, I think it is. So in your consultant work, you reach a lot of people in a lot of different sectors of the world.
Sure.
So through your experiences with your work, what area of the Americans with Disabilities Act or any specific area of accessibility or inclusion do you feel needs to be updated the most?
So I'm not trying to be funny with this answer, but my answer is yes. meaning, meaning
That's a
the
perfect
most
answer.
is a hard thing to answer, right? Because it's literally, as I mentioned earlier on in our conversation, like if I could blow that document up and start it over and actually build it in a way that would actually work for you and I, I'm not saying that it doesn't work for you and I, but work better for you and I, you bet your bottom dollar I would do that, right? And if again, that's where I say having the disability community have the chutzpah and the heft to be able to go to lawmakers and say, guys, we have to do this. This is something we should do. We're not there yet, but like in order to get that to happen, we need to band together. We need to say, like, if you're not going to support me as a disabled person by updating the ADA, by cutting Medicaid, Medicare, then I'm voting your ass out of office, right? Because there are around 56 million Americans in this country, and probably more now because of COVID, that live with disabilities. That is a large population of people. We need to start being seen, and I've never understood from a diversity standpoint why disability is not seen on the same level as people of any color, LGBTQ. Like we should be right up there when it comes to talking about diver like, and I would argue we need to be right near the top because there's so much overlap. You can be a person of color, disabled, gay, like you can be all the things rolled into one amazing package, but yet disability is so much of an afterthought when it comes to those really challenging and necessary but difficult conversations. And that has never made sense to me whatsoever.
That is so true. I loved your answer to that. So thank you. It's and it's true. Like you said before, disability is a group that you can join at any time. And the also and also what you most recently said, the intersectionality of being disabled and a person of color and a part of the LGBTQ community, it
Right.
can all, they can all intersect in one person. So to have disability as part of diversity is very,
Because
very
think about
important.
it, like the only news stories that we hear about disability are Arthur or Matthew walked across the stage at graduation, which don't get me wrong, like there is a place for those stories, but what we're not talking about is the struggle that comes with like if we cut Medicaid or Medicare, how is that going to actually and sincerely impact people with disabilities' ability to hire attendant care, to be able to get equipment, to be able to do anything like we're not hearing about stories of marriage inequality because people with disabilities actually can't get married because if they get married, then they lose benefits. And so, right, like there's all these things that we just want to talk about the sunshine and rainbows of disability, which, like, we need to do that. But I also would argue, and I don't really like those stories because I think Like, I don't, just because I get up in the morning and I put my pants on every day doesn't make me an inspiration, right? Um, I think we need to have very serious and real conversations about how do we get rid of the marriage penalty? How do we allow, like, why am I not allowed to actually fall in love with someone? And if I want to start a family with them or I want to marry them, I'm at jeopardy and I can't necessarily do that. Legally, I can do it via ceremony and say, like, yes, this is my wife or this is my partner or whatever, but I can't legally do that. Because if I do that, then I'm inheriting that person's resources, benefits, and everything else. And if that happens, then I lose my, like, again, I've said this so many times in this interview today. Make that make sense, right? Like, it it doesn't. But there's so many instances like that that we have to navigate, whether it's marriage, whether it's benefits, whether it's, like, everything is so hard for us to navigate and deal with. Like, why can't I easily call someone and say, there's an issue with my benefits, can I get it fixed? But instead, I have to go through a million elements of red tape. I have to prove that I'm still disabled, which, like, what? Like, I'm not gonna, like, what more proof do you need than I have my butt strapped to my wheelchair 24/7? Like, huh? Like, again, make that make sense. Sorry, again, like, when I get going on this stuff, like, there really is a ton of head scratching situations that we have to navigate as disabled folks.
Yes, it is so true. Like you said, the verifying that you're still disabled is something that has always baffled my mind. And
Like, that would be
yeah,
like if
it's
somebody who
wild.
is a person of color had to continue to verify that they were a person of color. Like, what?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It does make you say, what? Oh my God.
What?
Yes, so true. Oh, Matthew, this conversation has been great. I really enjoyed talking with you and hearing your story and of all the amazing work that you are doing there in your local communities and beyond. And, really happy to have you as a guest on the podcast today. So, to wrap up, can you share with everyone where they can find you online, any websites, social media platforms that you use how can people find you?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me on. And sorry for nerding out for well over an hour with you, but it was a great time and I just love conversations like this, right? It's really important. As far as where people can find me, you can look me up. It's six with the number six, wheelsconsulting.com. We're all over all major social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, X. We were on Blue Sky, but got booted for some weird reason. Not really sure. Um, we're all over all social media platforms. I also have a podcast that, frankly, hasn't been updated in a while, but we have, I think, over 50 episodes of conversations very similar to this. It's called the Six Wheels Consulting Disability Podcast. It's all over all major platforms: Spotify, Podbean, um, iTunes. Find it pretty much wherever you can find any of your major podcasts. I highly invite people to connect with me on social, and or shoot me an email. I'd love to continue conversations, or meet new people. Always love meeting new people and figuring out how we can work together or just be awesome friends. I'm always down to meet new people, make new connections, and uh, at times when we need to commiserate together, but also at times when we're ready to do some ass kicking together, we can do that too.
That's right. There's a need for both, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. But
Yes.
seriously, Arthur, thank you for having me on, and I'm just incredibly grateful for a wonderful conversation.
Yes, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. I am so grateful that you were able to talk with me today. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I'm so positive that people will get so much out of this conversation. So thank you, Matthew, and have a great day.
Thank you very much. Glad to be with you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Our View, the podcast, where we amplify the voices and stories of those in the disabled community one conversation at a time. If this story moved you, taught you something new, or sparked a different perspective, we'd love to hear from you. Write a review of the podcast on Apple Podcasts and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Follow us on all social media platforms at Our View for Life 25. At Our View, we believe that disability is not a limitation. It is a powerful part of the human experience. So until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep seeing the world through our view.